Hi everyone, Mr. Owens here. I'm going to help you out with finding unknown angle measures. And this is something that's a little tricky at first, but the more you do it, the easier it gets, and the vocab is the hardest part. So I recommend taking notes on this video and having them to refer back to, having them nearby when you're doing your Edgenuity lessons. So for the first thing we need to know is the triangle sum theorem. And this is a fancy way of saying all the angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. This is for every single triangle, no matter what. So all the angles of a triangle always add up to 180 degrees. If they don't add up to 180 degrees, that means it is not a triangle, okay? This is one of the definitions of a triangle. So if we're doing a problem like this where it says, okay, 50 degrees and 60 degrees, right? Here's 50 degrees, here's 60 degrees. We want to figure out what that question mark is, right? So in order to do that, we can do 50 degrees plus 60 degrees plus question mark degrees will equal 180. You add these together, you get 110 degrees plus question mark equals 180. And now this is just algebra, which you have learned, right? How do you undo plus 110? You subtract 110 from both sides of the equal sign. These cancel out. We're left with question mark equals 70 degrees. Okay. Let's try another one. So here we have question mark and 45, and then there's this box, right? What does this box mean? How many degrees does that mean? It means 90 degrees because it's a right angle. So we know that question mark plus 45 degrees plus 90 degrees will equal 180 degrees because this is a triangle. So we can combine these and we'll get question mark plus 135 degrees equals 180 degrees. The way you get rid of plus 135 is by doing minus 135, right? So these cancel out and we're left with question mark equals 45 degrees. Okay, so this is 45 degrees. And finally, we'll do one more. Here's an obtuse triangle, okay? So we know that 20 degrees plus 130 degrees plus question mark is going to equal 180 degrees. 20 plus 130 is 150, plus question mark equals 180 degrees. The way you undo plus 150 is by doing minus 150, right? You're using do and undo here. So question mark equals 30 degrees. I hope that makes some sense for you. The triangle sum theorem is a really important part of geometry. Moving on, there's this thing called exterior angles, and these are the angles outside of the triangle. On the outside, exterior means outside. So outside of the shape. And this is one of those things that looks a lot scarier than it is, okay? So we know on the inside angles, 120, 20, and 40 have to add up to 180. And they do, right? If you add those up, they equal 180. But now we're also talking about the exterior angles, so the angles on the outside. So there's like this angle right here, right? This Y, right? This right here that I'm putting in purple. And you might notice that this forms a straight angle, a straight line, right? And a straight line, the measurement of a straight line is 180. So to figure out what this question mark is, right? 20 degrees plus question mark equals 180 degrees. You just subtract the 20, cancel out, you get question mark is 160 degrees. So this right here is 160 degrees. And this will work for all of the exterior angles. You might notice this is a straight line, right? So if this right here is 120, that means 120 plus something equals 180 because they make a straight line, right? You subtract 120 from both sides, you get question mark equals 60 degrees. So this is 60 degrees right here. And finally, we have one left over here. This is a straight line. here's the 40-degree angle right here. So you would have 40 degrees plus question mark equals 180 because they make a straight line. Those cancel out. You're left with question mark equals 140 degrees. So that's how you can solve for exterior angles. It looks a lot scarier than it is. You're just taking the interior angle and it makes a supplementary angle with the exterior angle, right? It makes a straight line, so a supplementary angle, they add up to 180. Now sometimes they'll get a little trickier, so here's one that we can try, all right? So we know that this is 80 degrees, right? And we want to figure out what x is. If these are both x, that means they are the same measurement, okay? So this x is going to be the same measurement as this x, all right? And so when we're figuring this out, we can think to ourselves, okay, here is a straight line, so that means these two are supplementary angles, right? So 80 degrees plus question mark equals 180. You can subtract the 80 from both sides, and you get question mark is 100 degrees, okay? So here we have 100 degrees. So now I know 100 degrees plus x degrees will equal 180 because of the triangle sum theorem, right? All the angles on the inside of the triangle, just 100, the x and the x will add up to 180. So that means we have 100 plus 2x equals 180. We're combining like terms. You can subtract 100 from both sides. You get 2x equals 80. How do you undo 2 times x? You divide by 2, right? So you divide by 2 on both sides. The 2's cancel out. You're left with x equals 40 degrees. So these are both 40 degrees, okay? That one's a little bit trickier, and but it is important. You notice how we're combining the algebra and the geometry that you're doing now. The algebra you learned earlier with expressions and equations, it's being used now in geometry. We have just 2 more problems, and this one will go fairly quickly. So you might notice that this angle right here, it says it's 60 degrees. This is a vertical angle with 2x degrees, right? And a vertical angle means that they share a common vertex, a common point, and they're opposite each other, okay? And it also means that they're equivalent. So that means 60 degrees is going to equal 2x degrees. So just like we were doing with our algebra, how do you undo times 2? You divide by 2. So the 2's cancel out. You're left with x equals 30 degrees. And that's how you would solve for x, okay? They're equal to each other because they're opposite one another, and they share a common point. Finally, here's like the boss level question, okay? It looks a lot scarier than it is again, I promise. So here we know there's 2 right angles, which we know are 90 degrees, right? So we should just say to ourselves, what do we know here? What do we know here? So let's start with figuring out what this a degrees is, okay? So we know that these are supplementary, right? The external angle of 120 plus a is going to equal 180. So you can subtract 120 from both sides. You get a equals 60 degrees. So this is 60 degrees. Okay. Now we can figure out what b is because we know a and this 60. So let's figure out what that b, let's figure out what that b is going to be. So we'll have 60 plus b equals 180. Combine like terms. Then you subtract 120 from both sides. You get b equals 60 degrees, okay? So now we have all 3 angles are 60 degrees. That's called an equilateral triangle because all the sides and angles are equal. All right, now we just need to figure out what the heck are C and D. Now C, we can't quite figure out because these are not supplementary, right? This doesn't make a straight line here. So we need to figure out D first, and this is where it's gonna get, I think, kind of cool. So to figure out D, we know that going from here all the way to here is 180 degrees. These are 3 supplementary angles. So 60 degrees plus D degrees plus 90 degrees, right? This right angle right in here is going to equal 180 because they all make a straight line. So you combine the like terms, you get 150 plus D equals 180. So you subtract 150 from both sides of the equal sign. You get D equals 30 degrees. Okay, so that means it's 30 degrees. And finally, now we can figure out what C is going to be. Right? Because C, we know the 90 degrees of this right angle plus 30 plus C equals 180 because it's a triangle. So you can combine these like terms. And then you subtract 120. And you have to C equals 60 degrees. So this is also 60 degrees, all right? So that's like the hardest kind of question you'll get. I know it's a little bit tricky and I went kind of fast, but this is the sort of thing, the more you do it, the more familiar you'll get with it, the more you'll see it. So be sure to take good notes, use your notes often, refer back to them, and email me if you have any questions. Good luck, everyone.